My name is Naya, and I am 23 years old. On this particular day that would forever change my life, I found myself seated in the place of honor, watching my husband take a second wife. The day my husband welcomed his concubine as an equal wife, the Ironhold Manor blazed with festive red decorations that seemed to mock me with their gaudy brilliance. Felix stood resplendent in his wedding robes, his handsome features animated with joy, though his smiling eyes held affection only for the delicate woman beside him. There I sat in my plain robes, the legitimate wife relegated to silent observer of this charade. My mother-in-law's cold voice cut through the ceremonial music as she reminded me that a proper wife must possess the magnanimity to accept such arrangements. My husband couldn't even spare me a glance, his attention wholly consumed by his new bride as he urged the ceremony forward. The assembled guests watched with barely concealed anticipation, waiting to witness my humiliation, to see how the once envied Lady of Ironhold would be reduced to sharing her husband with another woman. As the couple prepared for their ritual vows, a sharp, piercing cry shattered the pretense of celebration that hung heavy in the air. "Imperial edict arrives!" The words rang out like thunder from beyond the manor gates. Felix's smile froze on his lips, and the chattering crowd fell into deathly silence. I slowly raised my head, gazing at the approaching imperial scroll wrapped in golden silk, and for the first time in months, a genuine smile curved my lips. "Felix Ironhold, did you truly believe today marked the most shameful day of my existence? How wrong you were. Today marks the beginning of your family's descent into the abyss." The great hall blazed with crimson, red as blood itself. The air hung thick with the mingled scents of face powder, wine, and that particular fragrance of hollow festivity. My husband, Iron Marquis Felix Ironhold, stood hand in hand with his beloved Mira Softwind, prepared to complete their wedding ceremony. He had not looked at me once since Mira announced her pregnancy. Not once since he had informed me with such casual cruelty that he could not allow his child to be born without proper status. "Naya," he had said to me with the tone one might use to placate a petulant child. "I know this causes you pain, but Mira carries my heir. I cannot leave her without title or recognition." His words had been wrapped in false comfort, each syllable a blade. "You need not worry. You shall always remain the mistress of this household. No one can usurp your position." Every sentence had been meant as reassurance, yet each word had cut deep as any sword. I sat rigidly in my place of honor, dressed in pale moonlight silk that stood in stark contrast to the overwhelming scarlet that dominated the hall. My mother-in-law, Lady Margaret Ironhold, leaned toward me with a voice low and threatening. "Naya, today marks a joyous occasion for your husband and for our family. Wipe that deathly expression from your face and smile properly." I offered no smile. Instead, I observed the perfect couple before me with studied calm. Felix Ironhold, the capital's renowned young general, martial and magnificent in bearing. Mira Softwind, his supposed savior, delicate as willow branches, appearing fragile enough to break at the slightest touch. They made such a harmonious pair, while I had become the barren wife of 3 years, transformed into both his excuse for taking another woman and the obstacle to his true happiness. "First bow to heaven and earth." The wedding coordinator's voice soared above the gathered assembly as Felix and Mira turned to offer their reverence to the celestial powers. Yet the guests' attention seemed inevitably drawn to me, their expressions mixing pity, sympathy, and the particular satisfaction that comes from witnessing another's downfall. They all waited with bated breath to see how the formerly enviable Marchioness would swallow this supreme humiliation. "Second bow to the ancestors and elders." The couple now faced my mother-in-law and me. Felix still refused to meet my gaze, his expression betraying impatience and urgency, as though silently commanding me to accept their bow and legitimize his romantic pursuit. Mira's eyes held a barely perceptible gleam of triumph, her slightly swollen belly serving as both her greatest weapon and her most eloquent taunt. I lifted the teacup beside me, gently blowing across its surface to cool the liquid within. The tea leaves danced and settled like my own 3 years of life within these walls. When my mother-in-law saw my continued stillness, she cleared her throat pointedly. Felix finally frowned in my direction. "Naya, do not delay the auspicious timing." Though quietly spoken, his words carried the unmistakable tone of command. I set down my cup just as everyone assumed I would swallow my pride and accept this degrading spectacle. Then came that earth-shattering announcement. Imperial edict arrives. The proclamation struck like lightning, instantly shattering every sound within the wedding hall. Music stopped, laughter died, and the coordinator's ceremonial chanting caught in her throat. Felix and Mira's bodies, which had been descending into their bow, froze mid-motion. Every guest without exception wore identical expressions of stunned disbelief, faces that had shifted from extreme joy to extreme bewilderment in the space of a heartbeat. Yet amid this deathly silence, I rose slowly to my feet. At last, the moment I had awaited for 3 long years had arrived precisely when I needed it most. Before the astonished assembly, a eunuch dressed in brilliant blue robes embroidered with 4-clawed dragons entered the hall. He bore an imperial scroll of golden silk, flanked by a contingent of palace guards. Leading them was Chief Eunuch William Grey, one of the Emperor's most trusted servants and a man whose very presence commanded absolute respect. William's penetrating gaze swept the hall before settling upon Felix. My husband's face drained of color as he hastily pulled Mira down beside him, his voice trembling. "Your servant Iron Marquis Felix Ironhold receives the imperial edict." The household and all assembled guests dropped to their knees in unison, leaving only me standing. William's eyes turned to me, and that perpetually stern face softened into something approaching warmth as he inclined his head slightly, a gesture that sent cold dread through Felix's heart. "By the mandate of heaven, His Imperial Majesty decrees." William cleared his throat and unfurled the scroll, his distinctive court voice carrying throughout the hall. The Lady Naya of the Starwell clan, born of scholarly family, virtuous in speech and conduct, gentle and prudent in all things, rendered service to the state 3 years past, bringing benefit to both crown and country. This brings great comfort to our imperial heart. The opening words addressed me directly. Not as a member of the Ironhold family, but as Lady Naya of the Starwell clan. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Felix's body shook uncontrollably. Service to the state? Benefit to crown and country? He stared at me in complete bewilderment, realizing that his wife of 3 years harbored secrets he had never imagined. William's voice continued, growing cold and stern. Iron Marquis Felix Ironhold, as a noble recipient of imperial favor, should demonstrate loyalty and serve as an exemplar to all officials. Yet he has failed to govern his household properly, showing moral deficiency by favoring concubines over his legitimate wife, violating proper relationships and ceremonial law. Such conduct brings shame to the court and disgrace to the nobility. These actions betray our imperial grace and show complete disregard for the virtue of the Starwell family. Each word struck like a blade, each phrase like a whip. The phrase, favoring concubines over his legitimate wife, rang out like a resounding slap across Felix's face and that of his entire household. What had moments before been a joyous celebration now resembled a tribunal. Felix buried his head deeply, wishing the earth might open and swallow him whole. Beside him, Mira had gone pale with terror, her body swaying as though she might collapse. My mother-in-law, Lady Margaret, sat speechless and colorless, her lips trembling wordlessly. The edict continued relentlessly. In consideration of Lady Starwell's virtuous character, we cannot bear to see such a precious jewel sullied or subjected to such indignity. Therefore, we grant Lady Naya of the Starwell clan divorce from Iron Marquis Felix Ironhold. Henceforth, their marriage is dissolved, and they shall have no further connection. Divorce, and moreover, divorce granted by imperial decree. This was not something I had requested, but a gracious intervention from the imperial family itself. The assembled guests could no longer contain their gasps of astonishment. Their gazes toward me transformed from pity and voyeuristic pleasure to shock and awe. Felix's body swayed violently, and without his hands braced against the ground, he would have collapsed entirely. He had believed himself in control of everything, thought he was graciously allowing me to retain my position as lady of the house, never realizing that before true power, his minor aristocratic influence was nothing more than a pathetic joke. Yet the proclamation was far from finished. To honor her virtue and console her heart, we hereby ennoble Naya as Princess of Jade County with an appanage of 800 households. We grant her Purple Cloud Villa in the capital's suburbs, 10,000 taels of gold, 1,000 bolts of finest silk, 1,000 acres of fertile land, 10 imperial guards, and 4 palace servants. So it is decreed. Princess of Jade County. I, Naya, had leaped from a marchioness about to be diminished by her husband's concubine to a titled princess with real territory and income. This transcended mere divorce. It represented compensation from the highest realm, supreme honor from the Son of Heaven himself. William paused, slowly closing the scroll, his electric gaze falling upon Felix, who had already lost his soul. As for Iron Marquis Felix Ironhold, he deliberately drew out each word like hammer blows upon the Ironhold family's funeral bell. Having failed to govern his household and shown moral corruption, effective immediately his rank is reduced from Marquis to Earl. His salary is suspended for 3 years, and he shall remain confined to his residence for 1 month to reflect upon his errors. His mother, Lady Margaret, having failed to properly educate her son and having enabled his misconduct through improper speech and behavior, is hereby stripped of her noble title and reduced to common status. The words struck like thunder. Felix's mind went completely blank, his body crumpling completely to the floor. Rank reduction. The marquisate that generations of Ironholds had fought to achieve was now reduced to an earldom because of his foolish romantic entanglement. His mother, once a dignified noble lady, had become a commoner overnight. This fate felt worse than death itself. When Lady Margaret heard reduced to common status, her eyes rolled back, and she fainted dead away. And what of Mira, the woman Felix had protected so carefully? The imperial edict had not mentioned her even once, the ultimate humiliation. Despite all her scheming for recognition and status in the eyes of the imperial family, she was beneath notice, unworthy even of acknowledgement. Princess of Jade County, please accept the imperial decree. William's voice drew me from my reverie as he respectfully presented the scroll, treating me not as a recently divorced woman, but as true nobility worthy of reverence. I drew a deep breath, suppressing the emotions churning within me, and gracefully knelt to receive the decree. Your humble servant Naya thanks His Imperial Majesty for his boundless grace. Long live the Emperor! I deliberately chose your humble servant rather than this guilty woman or this common woman. A single word that changed everything. From this moment forward, I belonged to no husband but served only the Emperor, protected by imperial grace as Princess of Jade County. Your Highness, please rise immediately. Such formality is unnecessary. William personally helped me to my feet, his face wreathed in smiles. The Dowager Empress often speaks of you in the palace, expressing concern for your health and urging you to take proper care of yourself. These seemingly casual words sent fresh shockwaves through the assembled crowd. The Dowager Empress herself. I had connections reaching the very pinnacle of power. Felix, still kneeling on the floor, raised his head sharply, staring at me with eyes that held only infinite shock and estrangement. He looked at me as though seeing a complete stranger, as though 3 years of sharing the same bed had taught him nothing about who I truly was. Indeed, you never knew me at all. You knew only the woman who cooked for you, managed your household, showed filial piety to your mother, and endured every slight in silence. How could you have imagined that I, Naya, possessed my own dignity and my own resources? I smiled gently at William. Thank you for your concern, Chief Eunuch. Please convey my respects to Her Imperial Majesty. Once I am properly settled, I shall certainly visit the palace to pay my respects. Naturally. William's smile crinkled his eyes. He turned toward Felix, still collapsed on the floor, his expression instantly transforming to icy disdain. Earl Felix, the imperial decree has been proclaimed. Will you not offer your gratitude? Felix's body shook violently as he struggled to rise, finding himself utterly without strength. He had lost more than rank and wife. He had lost his family's entire future, his own brilliant prospects. Only now did he understand that the imperial favor protecting me was worth more than any military achievement he might ever accomplish, and he had personally shattered this talisman along with my heart. Your servant Felix Ironhold thanks His Imperial Majesty for his boundless grace. Each word seemed squeezed from between clenched teeth, filled with blood and regret. Beside him, Mira wept like rain on pear blossoms. She wanted to help Felix but dared not, could only kneel helplessly like a willow battered by violent storms. She should have been the most celebrated bride in the hall, but instead had become the greatest laughingstock in the entire capital, without status, without future, responsible for dragging her beloved's family to such depths. I looked upon them both and felt no satisfaction from revenge, only cold indifference. They had chosen their own path. I had merely reclaimed the dignity that rightfully belonged to me. Well then, this servant's duty is complete. William waved his hand dismissively. Your Highness, please accompany us. His Majesty's gifted villa has been prepared, and the palace servants sent to attend you await your arrival. You honor me, Chief Eunuch. I inclined my head slightly. I turned to leave without sparing Felix another glance, walking toward the door with measured steps. My personal maid Ruby had been crying tears of joy, following behind me as though escaping from purgatory itself. Naya! Felix's hoarse voice called out behind me, carrying a note of desperate pleading. I did not pause. Naya, stop! When he saw I would not respond, his voice became shrill. Was all of this your design from the beginning? Did you marry me solely for this day? You used me? Finally, I stopped and slowly turned back. Looking at his face, twisted with anger and unwillingness to accept defeat, I found myself almost amused. Felix Ironhold, I spoke quietly, yet my words carried clearly throughout the silent hall. I never designed anything against you. 3 years ago, I genuinely intended to grow old with you, to be a dutiful wife and mother. I managed your household, showed proper respect to your mother, washed the blood from your campaign robes, and smoothed the worry lines from your brow. I believed that sincere hearts could meet with sincere hearts. My gaze swept over him, over the trembling Mira beside him, and finally settled on those garish red decorations. But what did you offer me in return? Deception, neglect, and today's supreme humiliation. For the sake of your true love, you trampled my dignity underfoot. Did you imagine that I, Naya, could not survive without the Ironhold family? I laughed, a light, airy sound that carried infinite mockery. You were wrong. I was never without options. I simply chose to give you an opportunity. Now that opportunity has passed, Felix Ironhold. All bonds between us are severed. From this day forward, you are a fallen earl, and I am a princess. You may take your broad highway while I cross my single log bridge. Pausing for a moment, I corrected myself. Actually, I walk the road to heaven while you plunge into endless hell. With those words, I departed the Ironhold Manor without looking back. Outside, sunlight blessed my face as I squinted against its brilliance and drew my first breath of free air. My new life had begun. The carriage rolled slowly toward the city's outskirts while Ruby continued weeping softly inside, tears of joy this time. Miss, no, Your Highness, we've finally escaped. You'll never again have to endure the cruelty of that mother and son. I handed her my handkerchief, my own heart full of complex emotions. Yes, we had finally escaped. My thoughts drifted back 3 years to when I was still unmarried, the eldest legitimate daughter of Minister Starwell of the Personnel Department. My maternal grandfather had been a renowned physician who once served as director of the Imperial Medical Academy before retiring to private practice. From childhood, I had studied medical arts under his tutelage, becoming particularly skilled in preparing tonics and strengthening medications. 3 years earlier, during winter, the Dowager Empress suffered a relapse of her chronic illness. High fever racked her body while the palace physicians proved helpless, sending shockwaves throughout court and country. My father worried constantly, often discussing the crisis at home. I suddenly remembered an ancient prescription my grandfather had left behind, specifically designed to treat such persistent ailments. At the time, I acted purely from instinct, feeling that loyal subjects should serve their sovereign in times of need. I spent 7 exhausting days and nights preparing 3 9-transformation revival pills using incredibly rare medicinal ingredients. I entrusted the pills to my father with instructions. This formula is powerful and should only be used in life or death situations. Moreover, only I understand how to counteract the medicine's effects. I sought no reward, wanting only to save a life. Miraculously, the pills proved effective. Half an hour after the Dowager Empress swallowed one, her fever broke. 3 days later, she could walk again. The Emperor, overjoyed, secretly summoned my father to discuss rewards for our family. Father, terrified by such attention, insisted that his daughter had merely done her duty and dared not claim credit. Later, the Emperor summoned me personally. That marked my first audience with the Son of Heaven in the Imperial Study, where I met both the current Emperor and the newly recovered Dowager Empress. The Dowager took my hands with tears in her eyes, calling me her savior. The Emperor asked what reward I desired. Gold, silver, jewels, high position, all lay within his power to grant. At that time, my engagement to Felix was already settled. He was the celebrated young hero whom everyone in the capital admired. As his future wife, filled with girlish romantic dreams, I loved his courage and looked forward to our harmonious future together. I feared that receiving excessive rewards might make him feel I overshadowed him, creating resentment between us. Therefore, I knelt before the Emperor and Dowager Empress, saying, "Your humble servant dares not seek rewards, but asks only that your Majesty and Her Imperial Majesty remember today's service. Should I ever face difficulties or suffer great injustice in the future, when I seek justice, I pray you might remember today's kindness and intervene on my behalf." The Emperor regarded me with complex expression before finally nodding. "Very well, we grant your request. We bestow upon you this jade pendant. To see it is to see us. Should you ever have need, present this pendant at the palace gates. Regardless of circumstances, we shall ensure justice for you." The Dowager Empress removed a string of phoenix blood jade bracelets from her own wrist and placed them on mine. "Dear child, I too accept this bond. Should anyone in the capital dare wrong you, they wrong me personally." This became my hidden ace, a card I never expected to play. After marrying into the Ironhold family, I locked both pendant and bracelets away, dedicating myself completely to being a Marchioness. I believed my husband would be my support, that sufficient virtue and patience would earn his respect and love. How wrong I was. When he brought the pregnant Mira before me, demanding in that matter-of-fact tone that I accept her as an equal wife, something died within my heart. 3 years of devotion could not compete with his supposed true love. In his eyes, my virtue and goodness were merely expected decorations. That night, I could not sleep. At dawn, I opened the long-sealed chest and gazed at the jade pendant representing the Emperor's promise and the phoenix blood bracelet symbolizing the Dowager's protection. My tears fell like rain. I had not wanted to reach this point, but they left me no choice for survival. Since that was the case, they could hardly blame me for personally tearing apart their false peace. I secretly sent the pendant to the palace with a single message. "The day the concubine enters as equal wife, may imperial decree grant divorce." I made no specific demands, voiced no particular complaints. I trusted that the Son of Heaven, in his wisdom, would provide the most just and dignified resolution. He did not disappoint me. Indeed, he exceeded my highest expectations. "Your Highness, we have arrived." Ruby's voice interrupted my reverie. The carriage stopped, curtains parted, and a magnificent estate appeared before us. Red lacquered gates bore a plaque with 3 characters written in flowing calligraphy: Princess's Residence. Not merely Purple Cloud Villa, but a complete princely estate. Imperial grace had truly reached its zenith. I drew a deep breath and, with assistance from palace servants, stepped down from the carriage. I, Princess Naya of Jade County, would from this day forward live solely for myself. As I entered my new residence to begin my fresh life, the former Ironhold Marquis estate, now reduced to an earldom, experienced complete catastrophe. After William departed with his guards, the assembled guests scattered like frightened birds, fleeing as though from plague. Within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the hall that had been filled with distinguished company now contained only the Ironhold family and scattered debris. Those bright red celebratory characters now seemed like cruel mockery. Mira knelt on the floor, sobbing until near unconsciousness, clutching at Felix's robes. "Brother Felix, what shall we do? This is all my fault. I've ruined you." Felix violently shook her off, his eyes bloodshot with rage. "Get away! All of you, get away from me!" Like a caged beast, he rampaged through the hall, overturning tables and chairs, tearing festive decorations to shreds. He could not comprehend. How had the woman he considered gentle, patient, even somewhat weak, suddenly transformed into a princess wielding imperial authority? How had the wife he thought he could manipulate at will been secretly supported by both Emperor and Dowager Empress? He felt like the greatest fool imaginable, someone who had discarded a priceless pearl while stooping to collect worthless glass beads from the gutter. Lady Margaret slowly regained consciousness to witness this apocalyptic scene. Stripped of noble title, her son demoted in rank, the Ironhold family's century of glory destroyed in a single morning. She released a piercing shriek and lunged at the weeping Mira. "You vixen! You harbinger of doom! This is all you're doing! You've destroyed our family!" She struck and cursed Mira, venting all her fury and despair upon the woman she had once adored as a future daughter-in-law. Already weakened by pregnancy, Mira could not withstand such abuse and soon doubled over with abdominal pain, blood staining her robes. Earl Felix's residence filled with screaming, cursing, and chaos just as my servants arrived to collect my belongings. I had departed decisively, taking only Ruby with me, but my wedding trousseau had been magnificent. 10 li of red silk, rich dowries that were all Starwell family property. I would not leave a single item for them. My capable steward grandmother arrived with my dowry inventory, leading servants directly to my former quarters. Felix rushed to block their path. "What are you doing? Who gave you permission?" His eyes were bloodshot, his voice hoarse. The steward grandmother bowed respectfully but firmly. "Replying to your lordship, this servant acts on Princess Jaudi's orders to retrieve Her Highness's dowry. Every item on this list belongs to the Starwell family and has no connection to the Ironhold estate." Felix stared at the lengthy inventory, his entire body shaking with rage. "She leaves and takes everything with her. Is she so heartless?" The stewardess replied coolly, "Your lordship jests. The princess is now divorced from you, so naturally her possessions accompany her. This is not heartlessness. This is a clean break." "I forbid it!" Felix roared. "Your lordship cannot prevent this." The stewardess raised her eyes to meet his directly. "The imperial decree is clear. The princess rendered service to the state and enjoys protection from both His Majesty and the Dowager Empress. Should you dare touch even a needle or thread belonging to the princess, tomorrow the censorate's memorials would bury your earl's residence." Felix froze. Indeed, he was no longer the powerful Iron Marquis, but a fallen earl despised by the emperor. He no longer possessed the authority to refuse me anything. He could only watch helplessly as my servant systematically removed every item belonging to me from my quarters, from the great rosewood canopy bed to the smallest hair ornament, leaving not a single tile behind. Finally, when servants carried out a locked redwood chest, Felix suddenly rushed forward. "That cannot be taken!" The stewardess frowned. "Your lordship, this also belongs to our miss." "I gave that to her." Felix clutched the chest desperately, as though grasping his last hope. "Inside are gifts I brought her from every campaign. She said she treasured them all. They're our only remaining connection, our only memories." The stewardess hesitated, looking to my trusted confidant. Having received my instructions, he stepped forward coldly. "Earl Felix, the princess says she severs all connections with your past. These so-called mementos disgust her." With those words, he produced a key from his sleeve and opened the chest before Felix's eyes. Inside lay not gifts but thick account books, each clearly recording how my dowry had filled the Ironhold family's financial gaps over 3 years of marriage, daily expenses, social obligations, Felix's colleague entertainment, subordinate rewards. Every expenditure was shockingly detailed. Felix stared at those ledgers in complete bewilderment. He had always assumed the Marquisate was wealthy and comfortable, never imagining that his comfortable lifestyle depended entirely on my dowry's silent support. The confidant removed the account books and threw the empty chest with its key at Felix's feet. "The princess says Earl Felix owes her debts. She forgives past accounts, asking only that henceforth you never meet again, each finding your own peace." With that, the entire party departed. Felix stood alone in his empty courtyard, staring at the discarded chest, finally covering his face and releasing the anguished howl of a wounded animal. What exactly had he lost? The princess's residence felt warm as spring itself. Stewardess Catherine Stone, sent from the palace, was a 40-something female official of practiced competence and proper speech. She led the household staff in greeting me. "This servant pays respects to your highness. May your highness enjoy eternal good fortune." "Rise, everyone." I sat in the place of honor, my voice steady. "Henceforth we are all family. I maintain few rules here, only one. Loyalty suffices. With loyalty comes advancement. This servant obeys." They responded in unison, their voices carrying respectful awe. Catherine presented the estate's registers and treasury keys. "Your Highness, these contain property records and land deeds. His Majesty's gifts of gold and silk have also been stored in the treasury. Please review them at your convenience." I examined the documents. The imperial family's generosity indeed surpassed all expectations. This three-courtyard estate with its pavilions and gardens was even more impressive than the marquisate. The treasury gleamed with neatly arranged gold ingots, while rare silks and brocades dazzled the eyes. Such overwhelming wealth might drive any woman mad with excitement, yet I felt only calm. These were merely external possessions. What I had truly gained was freedom, dignity, and the right to begin life anew. "Is everything properly arranged?" I asked Catherine. "Replying to your Highness, all is in order. However—" Catherine hesitated. "However, people from Earl Ironhold's residence have submitted a petition. Earl Ironhold requests an audience with your Highness." My hand paused while lifting my teacup. Felix. Did he truly have the audacity to seek me out? No audience. I coolly pronounced 2 words. "Tell them this princess suffers poor health and requires quiet recuperation. No one may disturb me. Henceforth, do not bother delivering any correspondence from Earl Ironhold's residence." "Yes," Catherine immediately complied. Ruby snorted with satisfaction. "He still has the face to come begging, absolutely shameless." I smiled slightly, without further comment. Felix's visit surprised me not at all. He felt no genuine regret, only unwillingness to accept that his grasp on wealth and status had slipped away. He wished to recover not me as a person, but the imperial favor I represented. Too late. Every medicine exists in this world except regret. The following days brought me unprecedented contentment. No more early rising to pay respects to my mother-in-law and endure her cold remarks. No more exhausting attempts to decipher my husband's moods. No more poring over account books, calculating how to use my dowry to fill the Ironhold family's bottomless money pit. I slept until naturally waking each day, strolled through gardens admiring flowers while sipping tea, or retrieved long-neglected books for quiet afternoon reading. Occasionally, I studied medical texts left by my grandfather, researching those intricate prescriptions. Catherine managed the household flawlessly, requiring no oversight from me. The 4 palace maids attended me with skilled hands and thoughtful hearts, caring for my every need. I even noticed my complexion had improved considerably since leaving the marquisate. One afternoon, as I read by the window, Ruby burst in excitedly. "Your Highness! Your Highness! Have you heard the news?" "What has you in such a state?" I set down my book. "It's about Earl Ironhold's residence." Ruby practically danced with glee. "They say after you left that day, Mira miscarried. It was a male fetus that hadn't fully formed." I felt no particular emotion. That child had been the product of wrongdoing and was fated not to survive. What happened next? Lady Margaret blamed everything on Mira, beating and cursing her daily. Mira couldn't endure it and hanged herself 2 nights ago. I frowned slightly. Another life lost needlessly. "And Felix?" Ruby's voice dripped with disdain. "He drinks himself senseless daily like a living corpse. Yesterday at court he appeared drunk and offended a censor. When His Majesty learned of this, he issued another reprimand and docked 6 months' salary. Now Earl Ironhold's residence has become the entire capital's laughingstock. Everyone says Felix was blind, discarding a luminous pearl like you for that harbinger of misfortune. He deserves his current fate." Ruby spoke with vindictive pleasure while I merely sighed. Having known this day would come, why act thus in the beginning? I rose and walked to the window. The courtyard's crabapple blossoms had bloomed in clusters and masses, brilliant as sunset clouds. How beautiful they are! My life should bloom anew like these crabapple flowers. The jokes about Earl Ironhold's residence continued fermenting throughout the capital. In tea-houses and wine shops, storytellers had already transformed the Marquise's wife abandonment into their newest material. Tales of Iron Marquise's love madness transforms wedding day to bitter day, and white moonlight becomes death charm. Noble mother becomes village woman overnight. Every story provoked raucous laughter. Felix and the Ironhold family had completely become the capital populace's evening entertainment. His career trajectory followed its predicted course toward termination. After his rank reduction, his Ministry of War position as vice minister was replaced by a newly promoted military officer. Court colleagues avoided him like plague. Everyone knew offending Princess Jade meant offending both Dowager Empress and Emperor. Who dared associate with him now? Within half a month, Felix was transferred to an insignificant department as a powerless nominal official. From promising young general to universally despised fallen earl, he had needed only one wedding ceremony's time. His mother, Lady Margaret, fared even worse. Stripped of noble status, she could no longer hold her head high among former aristocratic circles. People pointed and whispered when she appeared in public, while at home she faced an unsuccessful son and the inauspicious death of her daughter-in-law. They said she aged 10 years overnight, half her hair turned white. As for the tragic Mira, her death barely created ripples in the capital. A woman without name or status was simply dead. Some even called her death-deserved retribution. Without her interference, how could the Ironhold family have fallen so far? Such is reality. Success and failure, victory and defeat. It was ever thus. I listened to these reports from outside with complete equanimity. I had not deliberately struck them down. Their own actions had pushed them toward the abyss. On this particular day, the Dowager Empress summoned me to the palace. I donned elegant yet appropriately formal court dress, wore the phoenix blood jade bracelets the Dowager had personally bestowed, and boarded my carriage bound for the imperial palace. My princess's carriage bore imperial insignia, proceeding unimpeded straight through the palace gates, treatment that even ordinary princes and ministers might not enjoy. Palace guards bowed respectfully upon seeing my equipage. I understood this represented not merely personal respect, but an imperial declaration to the world. Princess Jade enjoyed their protection. On the same day I entered the palace, Felix finally reached a decision in his earl's residence. He would come beg me personally. His 1-month confinement period had ended, allowing him to leave his estate. During that month, he had experienced the complete fall from heaven to hell. Rank reduction, position loss, mother's decline, beloved's tragic death, family shame. In midnight dreams, he no longer saw Mira's tender gaze, but my resolute, cold, departing figure. He began frantically recalling every detail of our 3 years together. He remembered how each time he returned from campaign, regardless of lateness, a lamp always burned for him, warm soup awaited him. He remembered how every tear in his military robes was meticulously mended by my hands, leaving no trace of damage. He remembered his mother's constant criticism being softly mediated by my gentle words. He remembered his political social obligations. Those expensive gifts he assumed came from household accounts were actually purchased with my dowry. I had given everything to the Ironhold family, yet he had taken it all for granted. He had possessed a precious jade but fixated on minor flaws, his heart occupied by an ordinary stone. Now the stone had shattered and the jade had flown away, leaving him enlightened too late. Regret consumed his heart like poisonous serpents day and night. He dressed in plain clothing, shaved his unkempt beard to appear as presentable as possible, then came to my princess's residence. He submitted no petition, made no announcement. He simply knelt upright before the residence gates. This action immediately attracted countless onlookers. The former Iron Marquis, now Earl Ironhold, actually kneeling before his ex-wife's residence. What a shocking spectacle. News spread like wildfire throughout the capital's streets and alleys as people swarmed from all directions, pointing and commenting, "Isn't that Earl Ironhold? Why is he kneeling here?" What else could it be? Begging Princess Jade's forgiveness. Tsk, tsk. Knowing this day would come, why act thus originally, abandoning such a fine legitimate wife for some concubine arrangement, now regretting it too late? Exactly. They say Princess Jade has the Dowager Empress's backing. She's a princess now. How could she possibly regard a fallen earl? Those comments pierced Felix's ears like needles, his face alternating red and white, yet he did not rise. He thought if only I would see him, if only I could witness his remorse. Perhaps one slim chance remained. He knelt for 1 hour, then 2, from morning sun to evening dusk, but the residence gates remained firmly closed. No one emerged, as though those inside knew nothing of outside events or simply cared nothing about them. Finally, Catherine emerged from the residence. Hope flickered in Felix's eyes as he raised his head, voice hoarse. "Naya, is she willing to see me?" Catherine looked down at him with no sympathy, only cold distance. "Earl Felix, our princess departed for the palace early this morning and has not yet returned." Felix started. The palace? Of course, she was now a princess, able to enter the imperial court at will. That was a height he could never again reach. Catherine continued. Additionally, before departing, the princess left instructions. She said Earl Felix's remorse comes too late and costs too little. She, Naya, never retrieves garbage she has discarded. Belated affection is cheaper than grass, and she requests your lordship maintain proper dignity. With those words, Catherine returned inside and heavily closed the gates. The sound also closed the last thread of hope in Felix's heart. Belated affection is cheaper than grass. He repeated this phrase over and over, feeling his internal organs twisting together. Sweet blood rose from his throat. Pfft! He spat bright red blood that stained the stone pavement as his body collapsed like mud. In Tianan Palace, warm incense curled through the air as the Dowager Empress took my hand, seating me beside her while gazing at me with concern. "Dear child, you've grown thin. You suffered in the Ironhold family." I shook my head with a smile. "All that is past. Your humble servant lives very well now." "What very well?" the Dowager scolded affectionately. "I've heard everything about how those scoundrels treated you. Fortunately, you remembered me and the jade pendant in your possession. Otherwise, how long did you plan to endure?" I lowered my eyes. "Your humble servant failed to judge character properly at first." "Not your fault." The Dowager patted my hand. "That Felix was blind. I wanted to strip his rank entirely and reduce him to commoner status, but the Emperor said considering his ancestors' service, he should retain final dignity." I understood completely, feeling even more grateful to both Emperor and Dowager Empress. They had not only restored my dignity but considered court balance. This kindness I would never forget. As we conversed, a warm, jade-like male voice came from outside the hall. "Your son pays respects to Imperial Mother." I looked toward the sound to see a young man in dark princely robes walking gracefully inside. Tall and handsome with profound, star-like eyes and naturally noble bearing, he carried an aura of innate dignity. This was Prince Kai Stormridge, the current emperor's third son and his most valued yet most low-key prince. He avoided all factional struggles, dedicating himself to studying law and civil administration while maintaining excellent court reputation. However, I had heard he was cool by nature, never approaching women. At 20-plus years, his residence contained not even one concubine. Kai has arrived. The dowager's face lit up with loving affection. Come quickly and meet Princess Jade. She had started to say something else but changed her words. I immediately rose and curtsied to the prince. Your humble servant Naya pays respects to His Royal Highness Prince Kai. Prince Kai's gaze fell upon me, those profound eyes flickering with barely perceptible emotion. He inclined his head slightly, voice clear and pleasant. Princess, please rise. His gaze held none of the typical male appraisal or amazement, only clear respect that immediately earned my favorable impression. Both of you sit. The dowager beckoned us to seats on either side of her. Looking from me to Prince Kai, her smile deepened. I summoned you both today to arrange a match. Her words struck like thunder. I froze while even the usually composed Prince Kai showed slight surprise. Ignoring our reactions, the dowager continued, Naya, you are a wonderful child. The Ironhold family was unworthy of you. I've considered all the young men in the capital, and only my grandson here seems suitable for you. She turned to Prince Kai. Kai, you're no longer young and should establish a family. Naya is learned and reasonable, virtuous and gentle, and has rendered great service to the imperial family. Marrying her would be your good fortune. My heart shook violently, my cheeks burning bright red as I immediately stood. Dowager Empress, this is absolutely impossible. Your humble servant is merely of humble beauty and divorced status. How could I be worthy of His Royal Highness? What divorced status? The dowager interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. That was imperial decree divorce, the imperial family washing away your grievances, not your stain. In my eyes, you are more precious than any noble daughter in the capital. She looked at Prince Kai. Kai, what is your opinion? I nervously watched Prince Kai, knowing that if he showed the slightest unwillingness, I would immediately refuse this arrangement. I could not endure another forced marriage. Prince Kai's gaze remained quietly fixed upon me, that look deep and profound as though seeing into one's soul. After a long moment, he slowly stood and performed a formal bow to both dowager and me. He spoke, his voice steady and resolute. Your grandson accepts imperial grandmother's decision completely. Princess Naya's character and nobility, Kai deeply admires. I cannot remember how I departed Qianan Palace, my mind echoing Prince Kai's words, deeply admires, my face burning like fire. I had thought my heart was so wounded by Felix that it could never again respond to anything. Yet facing Prince Kai's clear, sincere gaze, my dormant heart gave an uncontrollable flutter. The next day, news even more explosive than my divorce proclamation spread throughout the capital. The emperor had decreed marriage between Prince Kai and Princess Naya Jade, with the wedding scheduled for 1 month hence. This edict struck the capital like a massive stone cast into already turbulent waters, raising tremendous waves. Everyone was stunned. A woman abandoned by a marquisate would instantly become the supremely noble Princess Kai, a development beyond all imagination. Yet the imperial edict hung posted at the palace bulletin wall, every character demonstrating royal determination. People gradually shifted from shock to understanding. I told you Princess Jade was no ordinary person. To have the Dowager Empress personally intervene, her service must have been tremendous. Absolutely right. Prince Kai is what sort of personage? His standards are impossibly high. For him to agree proves the princess possesses extraordinary qualities. That Felix must be regretting until his intestines turn green. He lost a marchioness and she immediately becomes a princess. Ha ha ha! True retribution. The wind had completely changed direction. Those who previously pitied me or even mocked me now regarded me with only awe and envy. I, Naya, had leaped from abandoned noble wife to become the most enviable woman in the capital, my life undergoing earth-shaking transformation within a single month. And what was Felix's reaction to this marriage decree? They say he was drinking alone in his small governmental office when colleagues brought the news. He stared blankly for a long time, then smiled, a grimace more painful than weeping. Tears flowed as he laughed. Like a madman, he rushed from the office, running desperately toward Stormridge Prince's residence. He wanted to confront Prince Kai, to demand why he was stealing his wife. Yes, even now, in his heart, I remained his wife. However, he could not even enter the prince's residence gates. Royal guards threw him out like a discarded chicken. Bold madman, how dare you cause disturbance before Stormridge Prince's residence? He fell pathetically to the ground, staring at that imposing residence plaque and those firmly closed vermilion gates. Finally, he despairingly realized that an impossible chasm now separated us. He could never reach me again. He had lost me forever. In the following days, I busied myself preparing for my second wedding. Unlike the first time, I was no longer alone. The dowager sent the palace's finest seamstresses to rush complete my wedding robes, while the emperor's gifts flowed like water into my residence. Prince Kai also sent small gifts almost daily, sometimes a pot of orchids he had personally cultivated, sometimes a book he thought I might enjoy, sometimes merely a box of sweets his cook had newly prepared. No sweet words accompanied these gestures, yet they revealed thoughtful care throughout. My heart gradually melted and filled under this gentle attention. I began anticipating our shared future. Meanwhile, Felix became a complete wreck. He no longer attended his office, instead locking himself in his residence with only alcohol for company. Lady Margaret watched his condition and wept daily, yet could do nothing. Their family had already disintegrated. 3 days before my wedding, according to protocol, palace etiquette instructresses would come to teach me imperial ceremonies. That day, a small incident occurred outside my residence. Felix had returned. Completely drunk and disheveled like a madman, he pounded on my gates. Naya! Naya! Come out! Come see me once! You cannot marry him! You are my wife! You will always be my wife! Come back with me! I was wrong! Truly wrong! I burned Mira's memorial tablet. From now on, only you, Naya. He howled and sobbed, utterly disgracing himself while drawing another crowd of onlookers. This time, however, their eyes held no entertainment value, only disgust and contempt. As guards prepared to drive him away, I had Catherine open the gates. I did not emerge but stood by my second-floor window, quietly observing him. Felix saw the open gates and, thinking I had softened, staggered forward only to be firmly blocked by guards. He looked up to see me in the window, dressed in magnificent court robes with exquisite makeup and cold expression. We gazed at each other across the courtyard, his eyes holding mad pleading and regret, mine infinite calm and distance. Earl Felix, I spoke, my voice quiet yet clearly reaching his ears. Have you caused enough disturbance? Naya! He stretched out his hand as though grasping for something. Listen to my explanation. Unnecessary, I interrupted. You and I have nothing left to discuss. Your behavior today merely brings shame upon yourself. For the sake of our former marriage, I advise you, properly conduct yourself as Earl Ironhold and cease disturbing my life. Otherwise, next time it will not be palace guards merely escorting you away. My voice carried Frost's coldness. Also, stop claiming I am your wife. I looked at him, pronouncing each word clearly. You are unworthy." With those words, I turned from the window and closed it. Outside came his utterly desperate howling, yet that sound could no longer stir even the smallest ripple in my heart. He had completely become my past, an irrelevant and somewhat annoying past. 1 month later, I married. 10 li of red silk stretched from my residence to Stormridge Prince's residence, a procession 10 times grander than my marriage to the Ironhold family. The entire capital's population crowded the streets, eager to witness this magnificent ceremony. I wore the phoenix crown and rosy clouds robes, seated in an ornate sedan chair, listening to triumphant gongs, drums, and celebratory cheers outside while my heart remained completely peaceful. I knew this time I was marrying stability itself. Before Stormridge Prince's residence, Prince Kai stood in brilliant red wedding robes, elegantly handsome as he smiled and waited. When he helped me from the sedan chair, I saw his eyes filled with tenderness and cherishing. "Naya, I have come to marry you." My heart finally settled completely in that moment. Married life proved peaceful and warm. Prince Kai was an exceptionally good man who respected, valued, and loved me. He never interfered with my interests, supporting my return to medical practice and even establishing a dedicated pharmacy within the residence for my use. He would play chess with me, read with me, tend gardens with me. He shared interesting court stories and would gently massage my shoulders when I felt tired. Under his devotion, I gradually recovered my former bright, cheerful self, becoming the Princess Kai whom every woman in the capital envied. Meanwhile, Felix completely disappeared from public view. After my wedding, he fell seriously ill and nearly died. Upon recovery, he resigned his position, locking himself in his earl's residence and refusing all visitors. The Ironhold estate fell into complete ruin. 2 years later, on a day of early snow, Prince Kai and I brought our 1-year-old son to a palace banquet. As our carriage reached a rather dilapidated street corner, it suddenly stopped. "Your Highness, your ladyship, someone blocks our path ahead," a guard reported. Prince Kai frowned and was about to respond when I lifted the carriage curtain to look outside. A man in ragged winter clothing knelt in the snow, his form hunched with premature age. When he raised his head, I glimpsed a gaunt, aged face that retained traces of familiarity. It was Felix, appearing 20 years older than his actual age. Seeing me, his eyes blazed with wild joy as he kowtowed desperately. "Princess! Princess, please save my mother! My mother is ill and dying, please save her!" His voice was hoarse and humble. Beside me, Prince Kai's expression darkened as he took my hand. I turned to him with a reassuring smile, then looked toward Felix kneeling in the snow with completely unchanged expression. I did not speak, merely observed him quietly as though viewing a complete stranger who meant nothing to me. After a moment, I lowered the curtain. "Continue," I instructed the driver. "Naya." Prince Kai looked at me with some concern. I shook my head, leaning against his shoulder and speaking softly. "Your Highness, I simply found the snow outside somewhat dirty to my eyes." The carriage resumed its slow progress, crushing pristine snow while also crushing a man's final hope. I did not look back as we rolled forward toward the brilliantly lit palace, toward my luminous future. The man kneeling in snow with his entire world was left far behind in the wind and snow, completely abandoned. The vast difference between clouds and mud, distant as strangers, this was the best ending for him and the best destination for me. That's the story for today. Hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here. See you next time.